Shadows in the streets of Basra.
Life in Basra had returned to a peaceful rhythm for Sinbad and his family. With the success of his enterprises, the city thrived, and Sinbad finally found time to cherish moments with Allura, Amara, and his children. However, amidst this peace, his keen instincts sensed an unsettling presence. Over the past few days, Sinbad noticed an unusual number of foreign merchants in the city. Men who claimed to be traders, but lacked the refined mannerisms or knowledge expected of seasoned businessmen. They lingered in marketplaces, asked too many questions about the security of key establishments, and seemed to be studying the layout of the city more than engaging in commerce. Sinbad, never one to ignore his intuition, discreetly summoned his security officers and ordered them to track these individuals. His men worked in silence, blending into the shadows of the bustling city, watching, listening, and uncovering a disturbing plot. The findings were clear. An attack was imminent. The Basra Guard Consortium was quietly placed on high alert. Security was strengthened around strategic locations: the Elsin Central Bank, Atlas Holdings headquarters, Vigo Enterprise docks, and Sinbad's mansion, all without raising suspicion. Guards doubled their watch, messengers moved covertly between posts, and hidden sentries patrolled the walls. Sinbad remained outwardly calm, never one to show alarm. He knew his enemies were watching, waiting for weakness, but instead of fear, he allowed them to walk into a trap of their own making. That evening, Sinbad sat with his family for dinner in the grand hall of his mansion. The glow of golden lanterns bathed the room in warmth, and the air was filled with laughter and conversation. Zaidan and Idris, still young but full of energy, eagerly recounted their lessons from the day. Kathiran, barely a year old, rested peacefully in Amara's arms. As the meal continued, a distant commotion reached their ears: shouts, the unmistakable clang of steel, and hurried footsteps. Sinbad, however, simply smiled and took another sip of tea. Allura's instincts flared immediately. Without hesitation, she rose from her seat, her voice sharp with authority. "Guards, secure the children at once. All servants, take shelter in the safe chamber." The room moved into swift action. The children were swiftly escorted away, the servants ushered into the secured quarters beneath the mansion. Allura ensured that her sons were safe before turning back towards Sinbad. At the same time, Amara's warrior instincts took over. She called her personal guards and ordered the mansion's defenses to be fortified. Then, with a calculating gaze, she turned towards Sinbad, who was still calmly enjoying his tea, watching the unfolding tension with an amused smirk. Amara narrowed her eyes at him, intrigued by his unusual reaction. Just then, the head of Sinbad's security entered, a victorious smile on his face. He bowed respectfully before speaking. "My lord, it is time for your arrival." Sinbad set his cup down and rose to his feet with a knowing expression. Amara, always protective, instinctively grabbed her sword and signaled for her guards to follow. Though she trusted Sinbad's abilities, she would never allow him to walk into danger alone. Allura watched them go but remained behind, staying true to her responsibility, protecting their children. As Sinbad stepped outside the fortified gates of his mansion, the sight before him was almost poetic. Hundreds of enemies, now disarmed and kneeling, were surrounded by his men. The evidence of battle was strewn across the courtyard: fallen weapons, broken arrows, and trails of blood that spoke of a one-sided conflict. The security forces of the Basra Guard Consortium had executed their strategy flawlessly. The attackers had walked into a death trap, and now they had nothing left but surrender. Sinbad's eyes scanned the defeated group with quiet amusement. Just as he expected, mercenaries, hired assassins, and spies. These were not just simple criminals, they had been sent with purpose. A commanding officer from his forces approached and saluted. "Any losses?" Sinbad asked. The officer shook his head. "None on our side. 20 of them are dead, 10 wounded. The rest surrendered. They confessed. They were sent by the Aruma Empire." Sinbad's expression darkened slightly. "I see. A response to the Mekatan Sea operation, no doubt." The Aruma Empire, long known for supporting piracy in distant waters, must have been angered by Sinbad's interference. This was their attempt at vengeance, a feeble one at that. "Hand them over to the state officials," Sinbad ordered. Let them serve as an example that Basra is not a city to be trifled with. At that moment, Elora arrived, accompanied by her personal guards. She scanned the scene and, seeing that the situation was under control, sighed in relief. Amara turned to her with a reassuring smile. All is well, Elora. There is nothing to fear. Sinbad observed the battlefield once more before turning to his wives. Let's go inside. Back in the living room, the tension of the night had settled, leaving behind only the quiet hum of contemplation. The flickering lanterns cast soft shadows along the ornate walls, and the weight of the battle outside had begun to fade. Sinbad stood near the grand fireplace, his arms crossed in thought, while Elora sat gracefully on a cushioned seat, her expression firm, yet touched with relief. Sinbad looked at his wives and gave a nod of approval. Everyone did their best in that tense situation. Then, he turned to Elora, his expression shifting to one of gentle concern. But you are not accustomed to battle, my love. You shouldn't have come outside until the mansion was completely secured. Before he could speak further, Amara gently rose from her seat, adjusting the folds of her elegant robes. Excuse me, she said, her voice composed yet distant. I wish to check on the children. Sinbad gave a small nod, understanding her instinct to be with them after such an ordeal. Amara left the room quietly, her steps light yet purposeful. Once she was gone, Sinbad turned back to Elora, his sharp gaze softening. You did well, Elora, but you are not accustomed to battle. You shouldn't have come outside until the mansion was fully secured. Elora lifted her chin, her regal posture unwavering. I am a daughter of a king, Sinbad. I do not fear standing by your side. Sinbad sighed, a faint smirk playing at his lips. That is not in question. But your priority should be our children. In a moment of chaos, their safety must come before all else. Elora hesitated for a brief moment before exhaling, nodding slowly. I should have been more careful, she admitted. But in your presence, I felt safe. I didn't think too much. Sinbad smiled at her words, appreciating her honesty. Just then, Amara returned, holding little Kathiran in her arms, while Idris and Zayden clung to her sides, their small hands wrapped in hers. She looked at Sinbad, observing how he had handled the situation with calm authority. A flicker of something unspoken passed through her thoughts. She had seen his care for Elora, the way he ensured her well-being. For a brief second, a pang of jealousy touched her heart. But as she glanced at Kathiran, the warmth of the child against her chest, and saw the trust in Zaydan and Idris's eyes, she reminded herself that she had felt the same care from Sinbad in many moments. She was a part of this family, a piece of something greater than herself. With a knowing smile, she shifted the mood. Let's put this ordeal behind us and continue our dinner. I refuse to let an ill-fated assassination attempt ruin a fine meal. Sinbad let out a hearty laugh, shaking his head. Wise words, my love. With that, the tension fully eased, and the family returned to their table, embracing the warmth of togetherness despite the shadows that had threatened to disturb their peace. The clatter of dishes and the murmur of conversation filled the room once more, as they knew, whatever the world threw at them next, they would face it together.
The battle may be over, but the war has just begun. Sinbad's enemies have fallen, but the shadows still lurk beyond the horizon. Who sent them? What deeper plot lies ahead? As tensions rise, alliances will be tested, and the next move could change everything. Don't miss the next thrilling episode. Like, share, and comment your thoughts. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss what happens next. The journey continues. Stay tuned. Until next time, adventurers, may your sails be strong and your hearts be brave. See you on the next voyage.